Good morning, Southern California, AM 1220 KHTS. Your host, Fred Arnold, on the Santa Clarita Valley Chamber of Commerce Business Spotlight. Joined by Steve Schaefer. Steve Schaefer is a reverse mortgage specialist at American Family Funding. Knows everything about reverse mortgages. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Thank you, Fred. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Now, we want to talk about some of the basics of reverse mortgages. Those that are listening out there, we want to make sure they understand because there's a lot of misunderstandings out there. Basics on a reverse mortgage. What are some of the requirements?
First thing to remember is that it's age restricted. You got to be 62 or older, or at least one person on title to be able to do the reverse mortgage. There is accommodations for a spouse, say who's maybe 58 or 59, but we can get into that at a later time.
So age is the first thing. 62
age
years
is the first
old.
thing.
Okay, great, and that's the first thing to look at.
Second thing is home has got to be your principal residence. You can't do it with a vacation home, an income property or anything like that. You got to live in it 6 months, at least 6 months out of the year.
Okay.
In addition to that, you've got to continue to pay your property taxes and your homeowner's insurance. Okay, that's your responsibility. And you also have to properly maintain the property.
Now, you can use some of the proceeds from the reverse mortgage if you're doing some type of cash out or some type of line of credit. You can use those dollars
to
do repairs and keep up on those expenses.
Exactly. Most people actually pay off an existing mortgage where the balance is running a little bit lower, but they're still making a payment and they'd like to get away from that payment. So they pay off the balance and then they can open a line of credit from there and they can use it for repairs or take a monthly income. 4 different ways that you can take the income from a reverse mortgage. You can take a lump sum or a cash out.
So a lump sum all at one time?
All at one time. You can get a fixed rate with a lump sum simply because it's a one and done type of transaction. The other options are basically adjustable rates because they're open-ended. We don't know how long you're going to live. Obviously, it's good for life. It's a loan for life. So that has to come into play. But the other options would be a monthly payment that could be direct deposited into your bank account.
Kind of almost like a retirement payment.
Sure,
a monthly
like an
pension.
annuity.
But the great thing is it's not taxed because it's your money.
Right, it's a loan.
Right.
Yeah, you're taking equity against your home. So it's a great solution to that. You can also take a line of credit. A lot of people do that just for expenses that may come up down the line.
Yeah, I tell you, you find as you get older, most of the money you spend on medical is in the last 6 months to years in life to be comfortable or live in assisted living, and you could use that. So having that set up, paying off, let's say, a mortgage of $100,000, and having $100,000 or $150,000 line of credit to utilize at your need, based on your needs, is extremely valuable.
Sure, that's one of the things where reverse mortgages that's new to it, that's kind of developing. It's more of a retirement planning tool. Mm-hmm. If you can set up a line of credit, say in your 60s, that line of credit will be good for as long as you live in the home, and it'll also grow because you're getting older. With a reverse mortgage, the older you are, the more money that you'll be able to draw on the reverse mortgage. If you don't use it, it'll be there when you need it for in-home care or something when you're in your early 80s.
Important to know. So what was the last way you could take distribution?
You could take a combination of any of the above. You can take a lump sum, you could take the monthly payment, and also establish a line of credit. So, for example, you do a pay off your existing mortgage, that's your lump there. You can take the monthly payments because you figure out what your costs are going to be, kind of like a pension as you had mentioned, and then set up a line of credit just for emergencies. Leave that alone, let it grow, and if you need it when you're in your late 70s, early 80s, mm-hmm. to cover in-home care and things like that, it's there.
And the money never has to be paid back. Now, when the house is sold, the myth is the house goes back to the bank and all the equity goes back to the bank.
Not at all. That is how the program had changed. There's a no shared equity. You own the house. It's just like a regular mortgage, except you're not paying more monthly mortgage payments as you go. The interest accrues. So it's I use the analogy of, say, going to Las Vegas for the weekend, and instead of paying for your breakfast and your dinners and your drinks and, night by night, you just check in on a Friday night and you clear the tab when you leave on Sunday afternoon. Same thing with a reverse mortgage. You go and it accrues, and when the home is sold, when the last person on title leaves the home, which can be through death or, they just decide to sell, move to another place, move to Arizona. At that point, then the mortgage becomes due, pay it off in 6 months, and you have 6 months to pay it off, and you're good to go.
Now, we talked about this being a refinance product. It can also be used on a purchase, can't it?
Exactly, yeah, and that's another growing
So
trend.
give me a simple scenario. Someone sells their house, had it for a long time, $750,000. They have $500,000 in equity. So now they have $500,000 to buy a new house. How have you seen people use this in the past?
Exactly. Well, actually, just kind of taking your example, I worked with a couple who had a home, $950,000. They sold it, walked away with $500,000 of equity. They wanted to move up north. Their son and his family had moved up north, and they bought a home in American Canyon, which is just outside of Napa. And they bought a $500,000.
Nice place to move, isn't it?
Nice place to move.
We'd all like to do that when
And the
we
real
retire.
estate was a little bit cheaper there too,
mhm.
and they didn't need as much room. So they bought a home for $500,000, but instead of putting all cash down, they didn't want to get into monthly mortgage payments anymore. But a couple in their mid-60s, they bought the home, and they only had to put 50% down. On a purchase, you typically put 50% down.
So $250,000 down.
$250,000. They got another $250,000 from the proceeds of the sale of their home here, and they put that into their portfolio. Let it grow either through, stock investments, savings, whatever.
And they have a fixed rate on the balance it's accruing. But think about that. Let's say, for hypothetically, Steve, the rate's 5%, 5.5%, but the other $250,000 earns 7, 8, or 9, which is very reasonable.
Sure.
You're actually earning more, and
It's a great, particularly it was important for some people too, to boost their retirement savings, because a lot of people took a hit
Right.
during the recession.
Sure.
And they may have had a portfolio and they lost, $100,000 or whatever.
Right.
But to be able to sell that home and then suddenly get an injection of $250,000 with no mortgage payment on their new home, that's a pretty good situation for them.
Now, one of the main factors that people have to look at is the closing costs on a product like this. The closing costs sometimes aren't as unreasonable as the fact that on these type of loans you have to buy mortgage insurance to guarantee that if you ever owed more than the value of the home, you don't ever have to make up that difference.
Exactly. That's an important factor too. The insurance, they're FHA insured, most of the loans that I do, they call the home equity conversion mortgage, FHA insured. You are insured, it insures the lender that they will get paid no matter what. But it also protects the homeowner because you can't be upside down, as you had just mentioned. You cannot owe more than what the home can be sold for. And it doesn't pass on to your heirs, and it can't touch other aspects of your estate. So, for example, you get into a situation where your home, you lived there for 20 years, and unfortunately, say the real estate values go down, you've accrued a balance over the past 20 years, and say your home is only worth $300,000, and you owe $400,000 on the home. It can only be sold for $300,000, so
So they don't go
FHA will
after
pay
your
the
heirs,
difference.
and they don't go after you for the difference.
you can have $100,000, $200,000 in a bank account. They can't take that to pay that off.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Non-recourse tied only to the property.
Those who want to reach out to you, Steve.
Steve@affloans.com, or my direct phone number, 661-505-4308.
Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Schaefer, reverse mortgage expert at American Family Funding. We're going to jump to a quick break. This is Fred Arnold for the Santa Clarita Valley Chamber of Commerce Business Spotlight on AM 1220 KHTS.